Welcome to the Squared Circle Pit with your host, Rob Pasbani.
Now entering the Squared Circle Pit, he is the War Master. He is the proprietor of this Thursday's GCW Bloodsport. I'm so excited to have Josh Barnett here in the Circle Pit. Josh, this is the intersection. Here we celebrate the intersection of rock and pro wrestling, and I feel like you would have a training center at that intersection.
Yeah, I guess that's one way of putting it. I mean, I figure kind of everything that I get involved with involves music, particularly metal, when it comes to that. And I have no problem being a standard bearer in that endeavor, because I feel like metal just doesn't get enough play, discarding all the kind of like really bad instrumental stuff you might see every now and again. It just sounds like it's a Mountain Dew commercial. That's not really
metal.
Like bad
absolutely. and you would not be what I would call or what some call a metal tourist, whereas you just like the quote unquote entry level bands of like a Metallica and a Maiden. No. Like you would come out to Bolt Thrower, which is that's credibility right there. Like you have probably turned so many fight fans onto Bolt Thrower, I feel, just with your entrance.
If they have any sense of taste, or they're like physically and spiritually capable of withstanding the onslaught that is Bolt Thrower. Yeah, I imagine that it is the perfect thing for them. But I mean, I could be like a massively vicious gatekeeper, so to speak. Of like, oh hey, you're wearing a Sodom shirt, like. What album did they go from being black metal to being thrash metal? I could be that guy, but I'm just glad to try and just help it penetrate further and further into cult. But here's the thing. I never get particularly offended or bent out of shape if things, especially in the realm of extreme metal, are not necessarily accepted by a wider audience, because it's not supposed to be. I know it's kind of tragic to think of a person in an extreme metal genre spending practically every waking hour of their life becoming somebody that can create tone and skill and capability to play these sort of songs at the speed that a lot of them are played at, and knowing that you're never gonna like even probably sell half as many records as some like really terrible pop punk or whatever type of album. But it's that kind of dedication that makes metal what it is, why metal is still probably one of the only live musical acts that you can still see that still really gives a shit about it. And the whole point of extreme metal was that it wasn't to be mass marketed, really. I mean, I know that they've made a push for it in the 90s with Cannibal Corpse, and some of these labels tried to really run with it, but it's just not meant for mass consumption. And that, I guess that's part of the reason why I like it so much. If you can get through that barrier of entry, then you're in. But everybody else, F you.
In a way, it's kind of like combat sports. You can't, if you get through the barrier of entry, which is like, the first training sessions, you get the few stripes on your white belt, then you're in this unique area that most people don't even know about.
Yeah. So you could see it that way. It's not like people are going to keep you from being interested in extreme metal. It's just that extreme metal, by its nature, it will repulse a lot of people.
Yes. Agreed. It just with the vocal style and is such a thing to. When did you first discover metal? Like, were you always a fan? Who showed you heavy metal?
I was being babysat at a very young age, and the son, who probably had 4 years on me or 6 years on me, he was a metal kid. And I think the most vivid memory I could think of is seeing him, or maybe it was just the LP sleeve with the Iron Maiden Killers album cover, just being like, wow, what is that? That is, whatever this is, that's for me. I think that's the coolest looking thing ever. And Iron Maiden was my absolute favorite band as a kid until I found Bolt Thrower. But I still love Iron Maiden. Still one of my absolute favorite bands of all time.
That's a great entry point, I feel, because they do have that accessibility of somebody that might not have listened to metal previously. The vocals are very easy to grasp, but they still have the heaviness and the musicianship that introduces you to like the tropes of extreme metal. I think Iron Maiden, you couldn't have had a better introduction.
Yeah, and plus, the imagery, the aesthetics, and the lyrical content, the complex nature of quite a few of the songs are very good primers, I think, for extreme metal, because whether the vocals are Bruce Dickinson style with an operatic slant to it, or they're deep and guttural like Corpse Grinder, it's the music is still very much well crafted, complex at times, layered. It'll vary from band to band, but being able to have an ear that can attune to these sort of things, and also get to the point where you even realize that even without harmonious melody, these building blocks are still there if you know how to pick them up. Also, growing up when I did in the 80s, metal was part of pop culture. There was a aspect where you have your hair glam metal, and some of these other metal bands were as popular as anything else on the radio. And I know at the time we that really got into Slayer, Metallica, Megadeth, and then to Bolt Thrower and Death and Cannibal Corpse and so on. Yeah, we got to a point where we were just like, oh, that's all butt rock, is what we used to call it. It was lame. It was crap. It was hair metal, whatever. And then it feels like such a youth thing to rebel against, and it is. But then as you get older, especially even at my age, you go listen back to a bunch of that stuff, and it's all played by really, really talented musicians, guys that just spent tons of hours playing live, practicing. I mean, this was their life, and there was a whole infrastructure so that could be done with all the different clubs all around LA or whatever your different metropolitan city might be. Like, the kid seeing Twisted Sister on MTV and be like, okay, and being drawn into the videos and all that. But then being older and watching the documentary on Twisted Sister, if you didn't already know it, they were just slaughtering all over New York. And you had no clue that they didn't need to tour the US. They didn't need to do these things because they were crushing it so hard in their home state and in their market in New York City, playing places that bands like them were allowed to play, selling out places everywhere they went. And it's just like, okay, you're not familiar with these kind of regional aspects of that scene, especially nowadays where things don't seem nearly as regional. It's like all internet driven, or I shouldn't say all, but because metal still uses live performing and regional aspects, but so much of it just like you get it on the internet and you spread the biggest umbrella you could. Well, that just wasn't available back then, so people had to become like kings of their own areas, just like that whole Sunset Strip. You look back and you listen to a band like Rat, let's just say. I mean, you could name all like Poison, Motley Crue, but listen to Rat. Awesome riffs, and you start listening to the way that they would play and put these songs together, and a lot of it was seen as pop music, but man, it rocks. It's really good. Or even listen to like Blow My Fuse by Kix. That's a kick-ass song.
Yeah, that's how I felt about Motley Crue for the longest time. I wouldn't listen to them. And then when the movie came out, I started really listening more so to the older stuff, like before they got into the power ballads, when they were still giving the metal vibe. And what stood out to me more than anything was the tone, and the production was so high end, and it was so clear, and you could hear everything. And I have a huge affinity for pop metal because, like you said, metal is not for the mainstream. It's very lo-fi, not a lot of money in it. But when there is a band that is big enough to welcome in the production, it's so exciting to hear high end studio production for metal. Like I feel that way with Ghost now too. They've reached a level where they could really create these atmospheres with their music that a smaller band that's just touring regionally, you can only use so many tricks without getting the pros in. So that's the benefit of the pop metal thing to me.
Well, I can agree with that. And, you want that option as well as like the most necro cult, whatever kind of black metal tape that you had to get by signing up to some weird message board, then getting a map and traipsing off into the forest and digging underneath some old oak tree and finding this tape buried in there, wrapped up in a body bag. I don't know, but and I would love that EP. I'd be happy with that. But that pop metal era back then, to be generally a successful band, you had to have real chops. Otherwise, you just were never going to make it, because everybody was there to see you live. They didn't record things in Pro Tools and pieces. They had to record. I mean, you could record separate aspects, but everything was going to tapes if they didn't just record it all in one go and play a whole song or a whole album and record it that way. So you just had to be on point. And I'll make this example with someone like, I'll talk to them and say, yeah, you know, that band Journey with that Don't Stop Believing that gets heard everywhere, right? That was a prog rock band. Go listen to the way Neil Schoen's guitar parts are, and practically everything, even into their more pop eras. Like, these guys are incredible at what they do. Or like, you love that song. What's the one that always uses? I mean, Rosanna, or all this stuff by like Toto, right? Well, then you go, do you realize like people in Toto were writing songs for everyone? Like, everyone in this band, when you hear the songs that you recognize from Toto, they're already like 30 something years old, which is never allowed to happen these days. It seems like you have to be just barely legal, as they put it, to get out there into the world and then present whatever your pop fluff is. And you didn't write any of it. You don't play any of it. Whereas with the bands back in the day, like a Toto, they were making arena rock music, popular music, and ballads and things like that. Every single person in that band was like amazing at what they did, and a killer in their own right, session level capability, had like thousands of hours of not only practicing but performing together. I mean, it was just a whole different animal. So when you can go back and listen to this stuff, there's really, really amazing stuff out there to be heard, and really well crafted, well thought out, and they wrote it. So if you go and you saw them, even if you catch Motley Crue on their best day on one of their tours now, I don't know what day that's going to be, but if you catch them on one of their best days, because I saw them at Ozfest years back, and they were awesome that night. They wrote all that shit. They're playing their own music. That's great to see and great to hear. And I'm also pretty happy to see bands like Behemoth, Amon Amarth. You can kind of put Ghost in towards that extreme side of things, but these things breaking through and above where that ceiling used to be for an extreme metal band, and seeing more widespread interest and acceptance of these bands. But ultimately, it's I still love the fact that there's the barrier of entry. I love it.
There is a barrier, but it is cool to see a band like Amon Amarth playing the Forum, which is a huge arena, which you would never think, seeing them 15 years ago, that's something achievable for a band like that. But it shows that there is an audience for that. And I feel with TikTok now, and in general with younger people, it's not so much about bands as it is about songs. So if you just have a catchy part, it can go viral on TikTok, and all of a sudden you have a new fan base. I think that actually happened to Ghost. Like, one of their newer songs was just like a meme, and then they got all this new audience. So it's really interesting how people discover music now. Like, growing up, for us, it was the radio, MTV, word of mouth. Now, two of those things don't exist anymore, and it's just word of mouth. It's streaming playlist, I guess. How do you find new music? Like where do you seek new stuff out?
I know they're a double-edged sword with things like Spotify, and I do agree that Spotify should pay their artists more. I think that it's fully possible, if the numbers were ran, that more money could be distributed under a different scheme, and Spotify would still make their cut that they need. Because I'm not about Spotify going under or them having to sacrifice everything. I mean, I really do appreciate and respect how difficult it can be to create anything, and how much overhead that could accrue. Like, having a company as big as Spotify, I don't know how many employees are absolutely necessary and to make that whole machine work. And it's very easy to just look at it and be like, I just click on the things and I get what I want. So how tough could this be? And so it's really tough, but it's pretty clever how they've arranged it to go off of the music that you do listen to and find new stuff for you, and having things incorporated into the application where you can get hit up about when bands or things that you're interested in, and you have new stuff coming up. I love that. And I like that. I like Bandcamp quite a bit when it comes to buying stuff. I like to buy things through Bandcamp and buy in a way that I feel directly goes straight to the artists themselves. And there's a lot of stuff on Bandcamp that you won't even find on Spotify. So you can have that little flower in your cap. You're like, oh, I know something you don't. But I don't know, man. It's with the way everything is delivered digitally. I do lament the fact that I feel like it's so easy to acquire any of this or find any of it that you don't have that sense of accomplishment. Maybe that's not the right word, but I know when I was in used CD shops and record stores, finding obscure stuff I'd never heard of. The first time I saw a Bolt Thrower album, I just saw the cover art and I'm like, what is this? It's got Warhammer 40K all over it. This has to be the thing for me. Or like the first time you see like a Cannibal Corpse album cover, you're like, whoa. Just all this kind of stuff. I mean, I remember seeing Samhain posters in a shop being like, wow, that's got to be cool. And now you want to seek these things out, and there's this mystery, there's this journey you have to go on to find things. And now that kind of journey doesn't really exist in the same way. So I feel like people of this era that have never known it any differently. I'm not saying this to be, as you kids call it, a boomer, or to be like an old man yelling at clouds. I really do. I'm trying to express that you look what they took from you, but what you're missing out on. But at the same time, I also, as being somebody that had to hunt so hard to find so much of the just really ridiculous shit that I'm into, because I'm such a strange counterculture driven kind of person, that I love that I can go find shit that I maybe even caught just a whiff of or a glance. I could barely remember. I could run it through the computer enough times eventually and find it again and be like, oh my God, that's what that thing was. And then I could find somewhere to pick it up. So it's good and bad. I still feel for all the kids out there that don't know what it's like to just see an album cover for the first time, be like, what is this? Read on the back, like, holy crap, this is nuts. And then just buy it, put it on, listen to the whole thing, pull out all the inner sleeves and stuff, and go over the artwork and listen to it and read all the lyrics. And I'm sure there's still people that do that, but it's just, it was different. But I'm also glad that all these people have the ability to access so much stuff if all they have is a little bit of will and a little bit of understanding on how to get to it.
Yeah, the part of the fun is the hunt, I think, with metal too, is seeking stuff out, and that moment of like, oh my God, I found something. This is great. This is unbelievable.
Yes.
Do you have? I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there anything new that you've listened to lately that you want to give a shout to?
Well, the latest Primordial album is fantastic. Although that's not super new, and neither is the new Marduk album is not crazy new, but also incredible. Well, I did hear some new Behemoth stuff, but that was in my own personal time, and yeah, that's pretty kick-ass too.
It's so cool. You know, you're fans of these artists like Behemoth. You mentioned Samhain, like Danzig, and it's you know, I've seen photos of you with Nurgle and Glenn, and it's cool because, you know, for me, I'm just a fan, but they come to you and I'm assuming they're fans of you as well. Like there's this mutual respect there. It must be so nice to have that. Like I'm very intimidated by Glenn Danzig. You know, I met him once, but like he's coming to you, I'm guessing, and he's like, dude, I love your mat. You know, I love seeing what you did, and he wants to fan out with you as you want to fan out with him.
The way I see it, I'm very fortunate that I've been able to make these relationships, and those relationships come off of Yes, we have obviously mutual respect for who we are and what we do, but it really is just, I just meet these people as they are, and I only present myself as I am. And you get along with folks, you get along with them. And so people like Nurgle or Danzig or Johan from Amon Amarth, or like the boys of Goat Whore, and all these different bands. I just meet them, and sometimes they know exactly who I am. I had a really killer conversation with the drummer and lead singer of Profanatica. He's a martial artist too. And it was great. I never met the guy, but he knew me, and I'd seen him. I'd seen them play live and all that. And just, you never know who you're going to run into. Or like the dudes from Canada and the band Panzerfaust are like big MMA fans and pro wrestling fans. And this stuff, of course, music gets to us, and we get jazzed up about it. But whatever we might be involved in is getting out there in the world as well. And even though these people are in bands, they're also human beings that have their own interests and their own predilections. And I met Daniel from Marduk because I was there to actually see Danzig, and I was a guest of Toxic Holocaust at this Blacks of the Black tour they were on. And it just so happened that Daniel trained Sanshou Kung Fu or Sanda, and used to fight and all this, and he watched Pride. He was a big fan, and so we had an entryway, but then we could talk about music, and then we could just be people, which is great. And tons of people in the metal industry are fans of fighting, and just cool as shit folks that have all their own interests outside of metal. So don't be a punisher if you do get to be in the presence of these people and hammer them about how they got their guitar tone, or what gauge strings they're using, or just be a normal person.
Yeah, I thought even at my BJJ gym, I'm always surprised at how many metalheads there are. Just I feel like you're just drawn to it. Let's shift to grappling a little. I definitely want to talk about Bloodsport, but first I wanted to know, like, how did you find a grappling? Was pro wrestling your first exposure? Did you start doing classes like karate classes? How did you get into that world?
Pro wrestling was pretty much my first exposure, but just I had an inclination towards being physical and roughhousing and playing and all that as a kid. I think it's kind of natural for a lot of boys, whether they ever even want to be fighters or anything like that. But like, I think really one of the first ways that kids will play is wrestling, and sort of fighting without trying to truly injure each other. That's just, animals do it. We're still kind of animals in a sense. And hey, we're talking about heavy metal guys, so a lot of them are absolutely animals. But from there, then I wrestled in high school, and I was always a huge fan of martial arts. And growing up in the 80s, you had the influence and the culture of kung fu films from like Shaw Brothers and all that kind of stuff coming from Hong Kong and mainland China. Then you had some of the Japanese stuff like the Street Fighter, Sonny Chiba, and you also had all the different Japanese shows, be they anime or even the kaiju monster films, all that stuff, because in the 80s, cable was opening up, satellite was opening up, you had UHF was getting integrated into the whole system. And so all these channels are being created, and they needed content. So one of the easiest ways to get content was to buy something somebody had already licensed and dubbed it, and then put it onto your station without having to actually produce the whole thing. So this was rampant, and you would see this stuff everywhere. And so you're getting tons and tons and tons of this stuff you've never even seen before that has a completely different cultural backbone to it. So it all feels very different. And then with video games, you get Double Dragon, then it advances to Street Fighter and Street Fighter 2 and stuff like that. Now you're getting this whole martial arts fighting vibe. You're getting pro wrestling, video games. Like, this stuff is all on the rise. So it was all around at all times. And I was there for all of it, loved it. And as soon as I saw UFC 2 on a tape, I was hooked. I just knew that there was going to be some way I was going to get involved in this. I didn't know what that was going to be as a 15-year-old kid, but I knew that I was going to figure it out. And, that would graduate to go into Japanese video stores in Seattle. renting UWF and rings and Pancrase tapes and watching them and just being like, holy crap, there's this whole thing going on over in Japan. And from there, everything just continues to just grow and expand. It's just like finding Iron Maiden. Then you find Judas Priest. And then maybe you come across Rat. Then you come across this. And then all of a sudden, what's Slayer? What's Metallica? Okay, what's a Megadeth? I know about Normal Death. This one's, it's a lot higher. It's mega.
It's 1,000 times higher.
It's 1,000 times, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, that was my experience too. Like I grew up watching WWE and pro wrestling, and then my friend once showed me a tape of Misawa and Kawada, and it was just like going from black and white TV to seeing color. Like, oh wow, this is totally different. Like this is not even. There's no soap opera here. It's just about fighting spirit, and the concept of fighting spirit is so exciting, and I feel like you're really carrying that on with Bloodsport. It's happening this Thursday in Philadelphia. It's sold out. The only way you can watch it is on Fight, on Triller, streaming on Triller, Triller Plus. And this is the true all-star game of WrestleMania weekend, I feel, because you have performers from literally every promotion. You have WWE, AEW, New Japan. You have Noah here, I see. It's so cool. It's such a great concept. I was at the first one that you did in Jersey, and I was like from the 2 minutes that I watched the first match, I was like, this is unlike anything I've ever seen. Like I didn't grow up watching Pride or UWF. I watched that stuff later on, but it was so cool to like everyone in that room was like, this is different. This is like, there's no it's not about because wrestling has become so much about performance and high spots. You kind of get away from the fundamentals, but what was so cool is just like the fundamentals can be really exciting too. Like an armbar could be the high spot of a match, and it works. And what really struck out to me in that first one was looking up at the balcony and seeing William Regal and Jon Moxley there, and they weren't like there to schmooze. Their eyes were on the mat. They wanted to see exactly what this was, and I'm so excited to see how it's evolved. And what do you have like a greater vision for? Like this seems like the culmination of all these years of that you were working on it with who you've brought in, and then you have the Japanese show coming up. It seems like you're getting into another gear with Bloodsport now. Yeah,
I am trying to get into another gear with this, but it's not the culmination. It is just
okay.
This is just the journey on the path that I've been trying to set for this. And
right, culmination is the wrong word. You're right.
By doing the right things, I feel like, and having a little bit of the right luck, the right timing, things like having WWE athletes like Shayna Baszler on the card, and having the relationships I do with AEW and New Japan and Noah, and being able to have talent from all these places to create this concept of a neutral ring that isn't about anything. It's not about undermining or competing with WWE, AEW, New Japan. It's not. We're not interested. There's no interest in that. It is the interest is creating, WX, like Ring Comp would say. This is a sacred ring, a sacred place, and somewhere that is wrestler first, where there isn't anything but the ring and the wrestler and the match and the moment, and nothing more and nothing less, because that's all that's really needed. And I truly believed in the ability to create this product if only you had the right people behind it. And that's not to just like give myself a handy. It's to say you can't even be overly upset or mad or irritated with the people in professional wrestling, or we could even say combat sports, but that don't understand how to create these things or what it is about them that makes them what they are. Because I'm very fortunate to have been brought into the pro wrestling side of things by people like Antonio Inoki, Billy Robinson, Carl Gotch. It must be getting old hearing me say this all the time, but it really does make things so different to have that as your background, to have your introduction through that. And then on top of it, being trained, so to speak, to be a professional wrestler by being on the road in New Japan Pro Wrestling, by getting to train with Liger and Chono and Nagata, having Gaijin wrestlers like Christopher Daniels and Mike Barton and Perry Saturn and Scott Norton, and people that have been in these big, huge companies, been small companies, wrestled all over the place, wrestled in Japan before. It just bringing that wealth of experience as well. So you get the understanding of what it means to be a WWF or WCW wrestler back in the day and all the dates you're going to be doing. And then you get an idea of guys that have been coming back and forth for years already, like a Norton and Barton. And also Christopher Daniels when he was in Michinoku as Curryman. And he was Curryman in New Japan. And then even having guys like American Dragon, Bryan Danielson, in the ring. And now I'm working with him, because he's a young guy. Now he's got way more pro wrestling experience than I do at the time, but I'm the UFC, I'm a former UFC champion. I'm all this kind of stuff. And so between these different experiences, we're all helping each other, elevate what we have and what we're capable of, but not from the place of simply choreography. And a lot of wrestling is based on choreography. There's a lot of things that I think are just taken as given, but the reason why they exist is forgotten. And this isn't just about wrestling. This isn't a rant about wrestling, a damning or condemning wrestling in any way, or even that is how things are, because this actually is something that will happen to any system if the people that know how to actually maintain it, know how it works, know how it's built, know the mechanics of it, aren't around anymore. The more it just becomes something that is shadowed or imitated, but not truly understood. You can do all these things, but you really don't know why. It appears like the thing, but it's lacking the fundamental understanding of what it really is to make that and why you would. It just happens. And over time, it gets more and more and more diluted away from that source to where the original founding reason that made it what it was and made it as potent as it was as to why you would even approach it that way, do it that way, it gets forgotten. And then the new understanding, which is actually a lack of understanding, takes over. It's just anything you build probably takes 2, 3, maybe 5 times more to maintain, to continue. And I don't go out there and get hard and that's an interesting turn of phrasing, but like give people a bunch of shit and give them a hard time about that which they don't know. And I had seen shoot style attempts, and I've seen all the knockoff stuff since doing Josh Barnett's Bloodsport, and ultimately dressing them down or like trying to see you can give yourself some likes and some interest by shitting on somebody else. I mean, there's just no point in that, especially if you really believe like you're doing the best thing that you can do. Then just focus on that. And I've seen it continue to grow. I've seen the audience not only become receptive to it, but now starting to become people that are really looking for it and really appreciate it. Now's the time to just keep building things and building better and bigger things so that we can bring the best product that we can. And that's it.
And I feel like even the wrestlers, are excited about this, because I feel like, I'm assuming wrestlers come to you and be like, hey, I want to do that. Like last year you had Kota Ibushi's first match returning, and because it's unlike any other wrestling event really happening.
You said it. Honestly, if I was as over with this and this product, with the general pro wrestling, not this the indie or the WWE, but just the general wrestling and maybe even combat sports fan base, as I am with like the wrestlers and the business, I mean, holy crap, this would be insane. And I'm not saying that to like, way to go, Barry Horowitz here, but I really believe in what I'm doing. I really believe that our ring gives a place for the wrestlers to really shine and to have a place that feels really strong towards making them and everyone a part of it elevated. That whole rising tide lifts all boats. It really does. And that's the intent. I don't want anyone to leave Bloodsport looking or thought about any less than when they stepped in that ring. Everybody has to leave that night with greater respect, interest, and admiration from the business and the fans at large. And I that's a success to me. It's a failure if somebody comes into Bloodsport and leaves it like, oh, even worse. It's like that then I don't know what we did wrong, but we need to fix that. And I'm glad that it has been what it has. And you're right. I get flooded with people that want to do Bloodsport all the time. And the toughest thing is to try and get folks to understand it's not about moves. It's not about pretending to do an MMA match. It's not about any of those things. It's not everybody can do this style and do it well. But I also think that pro wrestling is not something that everyone can do either. I think it takes a certain person. And when you finally get that magic, you see it. And it takes a lot of hard work. Some people have more, I don't know, maybe inborn traits that help them with that, or, they get it right away. Others take a longer time. It does, whatever it is, man. It's just, wrestling's a special kind of magical place. It can't be forced. You can't do it by imitating it. You really got to understand it, and you got to learn how to thrive in it. And I like to think that Bloodsport helps showcase that, and the wrestlers feel ultimately like this is a place for us.
Yeah, and so I wanted to ask about Shayna Baszler. I believe she's the first active WWE performer to compete on a non-WWE event. Like, there's been some NXT guys they've sent, but never a main roster person. Did you approach Shayna and WWE with the idea? Did they come to you? How did this come about, or what can you say about it?
What I can say is that I've been in conversation with WWE about, and NXT, we'll include NXT under that whole umbrella, about using their talent when and if it was possible. Because as much as I knew that was practically impossible, it wasn't 100%. It was probably 99.9. So, so you're saying there's a chance.
So there's a chance.
And for me, it was like, you could tell me no. I'm not mad. I'm not upset. I'm not hinging everything on one particular name from a really like near impossible place to secure such an opportunity. So I just stay the course, be who I am, run the shows the way I do, always invite all the talent or offices that you want to come and watch a show. Come on, come check it out. And we have WWE talent, our scouts, at our pretty much every single one of our shows. And I just invite, yeah, go ahead, come on down. Whatever you need, we'll help you out. Glad to have you here. I hope you enjoy it. And just taking that kind of attitude, I think, goes a long way for people to like, well, there's no pressure, there's no pushing, there's no like, I need you to do this for me. It's none of those things. I'm just trying to create the coolest fucking thing I can, and come along. If you dig it, great. If you don't, that's fine. But we're going to keep doing our thing. And with that, I was very fortunate to have access to my own student, Shayna Baszler,
right?
Which is it's even more perfect that way. But as soon as Marina left NXT, brought her to Bloodsport. After our first show, Mox reached out to Brett and goes, this is something I got to do one day. I need to be in the ring with Barnett. And we made that happen. It was a bloody, brutal battle, but it was, in retrospect, a lot of fun. And seeing how this ring has launched a lot of people from the indies into larger organizations like New Japan Pro Wrestling, WWE, NXT, and AEW, to name a few. I get why people want to be in here, but it's not just about that, and it's not just about, well, anybody could do this style. Anybody can't, but that's okay too. I'm not here to be like, oh, look at us, you suck because you can't do it. It's like, no, it's okay, man. But I really appreciate and respect all the people reaching out to me to want to be into Bloodsport. And I've only really had one guy say something really stupid and then me be like, okay, cool. thanks for that. Enjoy watching from the outside forever. But otherwise, I love it. I love the enthusiasm. And when I even get a chance to have some conversations with folks, and if they ask for advice, I'll give them some, because ultimately I just want people to succeed.
And how do you put together the matches? What goes into deciding who do you think would be good, dance partner, so to speak?
Just my intuition.
Who you want to see fight.
Yeah, kind of. And then I'm also very fortunate, by working with Brett Lauderdale of GCW. I get his opinions too. I get him talking about who certain wrestlers are and how they've been doing in the indie markets and what their perceived, we'll call it star level is at any given moment. And it's good to have his set of eyes and ears and understanding, which is different from mine. So we can take those two ways of approach towards this and meld them together. There's matches at times that I built, that Brett built, or that we both built. And he's always available for me to reach out to and be like, hey, what do you think of this guy? Or do you think this matchup makes sense? And so he's really great to ping things off of. And I love the fact that he's a dad, he's committed to making his GCW product, his vehicle, and he wants to take care of it because, he's out there being a dad and building a life. And it's great.
It's very impressive what he's built up, like this modern day kind of ECW. And but it's beyond what ECW even did, I feel, with all these different sects, like with Bloodsport and the other brands that he's building. And you just announced the first Japanese Bloodsport for June 22nd. And in some ways, I feel like the lineup of the roster that you have here is even more insane. The Japanese roster is even more insane than the US roster, because you have names like Suzuki and Sakuraba, which fit in the Bloodsport vibe. But then you announced two guys that I was a little surprised to see. Quentin Rampage Jackson, not super surprising, but surprising in the sense that he's been kind of low key lately. And also Mike O'Hearn, which I can't wait to see Mike O'Hearn in a Bloodsport ring. That sounds so exciting. It's like I said, this is one of the most unique shows you could put on in wrestling, because you just don't know what to expect. How did you get these two guys reach out to you? Did you reach out to them? How did you put together this Japanese lineup?
That's just me doing my thing. And the Japanese show is the biggest version of all of this yet. It's at Yogoku Kokugi-Con, aka Sumo Hall. So it's 7,000 seats. It's going to be a big deal. This is the kind of thing that I always envisioned for Bloodsport. And it wasn't like I'm going to make it huge, it's going to take over. No, I just knew that we have the capability of continually ramping up this product. And it's not about, will we end up in the Tokyo Dome someday? It's just about, let's go where we can. Let's build to what we can. Let's do the best job to make this thing successful, financially successful, and keep moving forward, and the best cards we can make with what we have available at the time. There's plenty of times where I reach out to someone and the money just isn't there, and I go, it's okay. And I think, like, sometimes very rarely people have been like, oh, are you upset about that? Like, no, man, you got your business to run. I have mine. I'm not here to force you into anything. I want only people that want to be a part of this. And sometimes I can meet the numbers that they want. Sometimes I can't. And if we can negotiate that and everybody's still happy at the end of the day, then I'm happy. If it can't be made to happen, then I just have to go, okay, man, it's just beyond my capabilities. And I think you're dope. That's why I reached out, but this is just where it is. And with Japan, it's all what we've been doing with Bloodsport, but on a much bigger scale. So with that, I had to think bigger and reach out to things like if the original main event that was planned could have came through, everybody would be absolutely blown away. They would have they would be just going like, you got to be kidding me. How did you make that happen? This would be, people have no idea how insane that would be. But unfortunately, it wasn't able to be put together for no like serious issues. It just couldn't fit, and that's okay. But we still have built an incredible lineup with this show. There's still more wrestlers that have not been announced. The matchups have not been announced. I think it's only going to keep capturing people's attention when they see how this thing is being structured. And I just, when it came to getting some of this talent, I just reach out to them. And I'm lucky because Rampage is a very good friend. He's an old training partner, and I used to train him at one point too. So it made sense to reach out to Rampage and like, look, I know you love pro wrestling. And Japan and this show would be the perfect place for you to make your debut. And I think he's going to do fantastic with Mike. Mike has trained pro wrestling some in the past. And he has a judo black belt, I believe. And if you've ever watched Battle Dome or that reboot of the American Gladiators, you pretty much knew that if you ended up with Titan, or I forget what his name was in Battle Dome, if that was the guy you had to go against, you were screwed. He literally ragdolled and beat the crap out of everyone, it seemed like, on those shows. And the thing is, I'm lucky because Mike's basically a family friend. I've known him since I was, I don't know, maybe 16 years old. And yeah, he's from Washington State, and him and my brother-in-law grew up together, lifted together, power lifted together, and he's just part of the family. So with Mike, it was like, look, man, I know you'll crush it. You'll do a great job. And Sakuraba and Funaki are things that I have now the opportunity to bring them into my ring because we're in Japan. So we're not having to fly them over. We're not having to deal with maybe other things that could impede that happening. So now, okay, great. I'm going to take advantage of being in Japan, and I'm going to stack a lot of high-level Japanese talent on this card to appeal to that audience, but also put together things for our international audience that I think is really going to really catch them in the heart, and leave that impression of, man, I'm so glad I got to see this on all those viewers, because we do have it running on, I guess it's Triller, isn't it? I always still call it Fight TV.
Yeah.
It'll be available on pay-per-view there. And I want to make that impact. I went and reached out and personally visited, spoke with, and signed David Mazmanashvili, who's a Georgian Olympic silver medalist, an Olympic silver medalist at heavyweight. This is the kind of thing. I've got Davey Boy Smith Jr., the kid's a monster, catch wrestler. He's won grappling tournaments, former MLW champion. He's just a beast and a Bloodsport veteran. So I'm trying to bring all the pieces to this puzzle. I think we'll put together the brightest picture.
And not only are you a show promoter, you're also a beer proprietor. I wanted to mention Black Blood of the Earth, which is your first beer. And it is, if anything would be a metal beer, this is a very metal beer. It's smoky. It's a barley wine. Did you want something like black and bitter as your first beer? Is that intentional?
Yeah, I wanted a barley wine as my first beer. I do enjoy a dark beer. I do, especially if I'm just going to have one. I want it to be like, I want to have a punch to it. It's a great dessert beer if you wanted to do it over ice cream or eat it with pie, but it's also great with heavy flavors because it'll cut right through it. And at 11.5%, even if whatever you're eating tastes like crap, by the time you're done with that beer, you won't care. It won't even matter because you'll probably be wandering on the streets trying to find another one, and then probably some sort of taco truck. But me and Eddie from Rock and Roll Beer Guy, we got our heads together. I had these whiskey barrels, and we said, let's put this together. Sounds like a winner, and it's been doing well. And I've sent it to all kinds of friends and family, and they've dug it. Some people didn't. Not everybody loves a big smoky dark beer, but I'm pretty happy with it. You can get it here in Southern California, though, but not outside of the state, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I love the artwork for it. It looks like the cover of a band that would open for Cannibal Corpse or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I worked with a cat named Solo Machello. He does album artwork, and you can find his art on Instagram. Great guy, and did a killer job for us.
Awesome. Well, one last question, and I'll let you go. You've been very generous with your time. I've been training jujitsu myself for the past year. I've decided a year ago that I needed to like really take a hold of my fitness, and I wanted to do something fun, and I went into jujitsu. I'm at a 4-stripe white belt right now, and my thank you. My struggle, my challenge, I feel, is that I always it's hard to find training partners my size. I'm a 6'5" guy, 280. For as a fellow large man, what is your advice for me? What should I be doing or seeking out in the mats?
Well, for one, always add your physical fitness component to it. Do extra push-ups, extra sit-ups, extra squats, do your, some jogging, anything you can do to be just in better shape overall. That's always going to help you. Number two, I would say find the best training partners that you can, if only to do a lot of drill work with them, to get those movements down, to get the visual as well as the physical recognition of what you're trying to accomplish. And then it won't matter too much if there are size disparities. They're not something that can be ignored, because that will make a difference. If you're rolling with somebody who's 140 pounds, but you're going to compete against people that are 280 pounds, then obviously trying to hit that same elevator sweep is not going to be exactly the same process, and it's going to be far more difficult to pull off against a heavier person. But at least you got the mechanics of it. And then I would say the last thing is, when you don't have the largest training partners available to you, try to always work on your weaknesses as much as possible. Put yourself in the positions where you need the most work, and work from the mindset of just trying to succeed in those things. If doing it, you get your back taken, get choked, or what, it doesn't matter. Like, nobody's giving you a gold medal for winning or losing in the gym. And I know it can be kind of tough, because none of us want to lose to anybody. And sometimes somebody gets a tap on you, and then they want to make a big deal out of it, because whatever. It's like, I'm not telling you to be egoless, because I don't believe in that, but I'm saying don't let your ego override your ability to learn. And Billy Robinson always said you had to learn how to learn. And that's really true. And I believe in that, because generally what we think is needed, often it comes smack dab head to head with what we then eventually learn or can learn is needed. There's always so many more questions that you have no idea that you should be asking until you've actually spent time doing anything. Whatever you're going to ask to begin with is just simply because you're of your ignorance. Give yourself some understanding, and now your questions become very different and far more impactful to the overall process. And maybe I'll add a fourth one: recruit. Bring in some other big guy. See if you can, and make him your training partner.
That's all great advice. Yeah, nothing has felt more humbling than taking this class and just recognizing and acknowledging I don't know anything, and just like trying to be a sponge and learning as much as I could.
I love being a white belt again, as a common turn of phrase in martial arts is used. I love being a white belt again, and I don't have any problem saying, no, I'm just here to learn right now. I'm here to get that perspective from you and your process towards this. Not mine. I already know what mine is. I want to see a different one. I want to hear a different one, and see how's that weigh up against how I know things, and does it make me see things differently, or does it give me a new way of approaching something that I hadn't considered before? You just never know where that inspiration is going to come from.
Yeah, when I first started, I was like, I can't wait to be a blue belt, and now I'm like, I'm in no rush. I'm in no rush to be a blue belt. I'm just fine being a white belt, and all the expectation that might come with it. Josh, this has been such an honor to talk to you. I have so much respect for you. I have so much respect for what you've done with Bloodsport, and it's been great. I can't wait to watch it this Thursday on Triller Plus. It's only $5 a month, and for $5 you get the whole weekend of GCW Collective with Bloodsport, Joey Janela's Spring Break, the TJPW show, lots of fun stuff, tons of wrestling this weekend. Thank you so much, Josh. Hopefully we'll see each other at a show sometime.
I hope so. And let me add this: keep your eyes on our social media, GCW, Bloodsport, Josh Barnett, Bloodsport, all of our stuff. You just never know what's going to happen, right? We ended up moving somebody out of the women's tournament Masha Slamovich insisted that she take on Shayna Baszler, so that matchup got made as soon as Shayna was available to the card. So then we had to find a replacement, and Janai Kai, the MLW Women's Champion, I guess technically they're calling it featherweight. She steps in to be in a part of that 4-woman tournament, which has previous 4-woman tournament winner Lindsay Snow, who's also competed in Abu Dhabi trials, I forget what her belt level is in jiu-jitsu, is trained under me, done catch, done jiu-jitsu, a real killer, obviously, as she took home that first title. Then you've got Lady Frost with a gymnastics and taekwondo background, I believe, training with the Savage Gentleman to be prepared. And then you've got Marina Shafir, who has been on a tear in Bloodsport and comes with a wealth of judo and MMA skills. You've got this killer women's tournament, but things change, things happen. So something could change. Something could, who knows what surprises could lie in store for Bloodsport X still to come. And you have the main event of me versus John Morrison. And you've got killer stuff like Royce Isaacs versus Minoru Suzuki. And we've got Nick Nemeth versus Speedball Mike Bailey. So with a card like that, surprises are abound.
I love the tease. Your promoter brain is in full force right now. I love it. I'm hyped on it. I'm sold. You should be sold too. Like I said, this is going to be the most unique wrestling event you will watch this year. Absolutely check out Bloodsport. My highest recommendation. Josh, thank you so much for entering the pit.
Thank you for having me.